yesterday was specifically looking at the home just west of Nancy Guthrie's home, and they were specifically, the FBI, specifically asking about internet connectivity issues the night that Nancy Guthrie...
Interview 0:00/0:22. Everyone believed Nancy Guthrie was secure behind the gates of her own home. But what if the real threat had already been invited inside? In the next few minutes, we're pulling back the curtain on a chilling trail involving a $5 million ransom demand, a network of disposable burner phones, and laptop files someone tried desperately to erase. Together, those clues exposed a betrayal so disturbing it shattered the image of an entire family. And the most unsettling twist of all, investigators say the son-in-law wasn't just chasing cash. Authorities now believe he was trying to take over Nancy's identity itself. Stay with us until the end, because the single message that finally surfaced didn't just help investigators, it blew the entire case wide open. The concrete outside Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport still glistened under the early morning lights after an unusual desert rain when a convoy of black FBI SUVs suddenly tore across the taxiway. Agents from the Violent Crimes Task Force surrounded a sleek private jet moments before it could depart, boxing it in against the terminal like prey cornered by predators. It was 5:45 in the morning. Inside that aircraft was a man the public had watched for 3 weeks straight, crying on camera, begging for help finding his missing mother-in-law. Now those same cameras would capture something very different. Federal agents forcing him face first against the cold metal of the plane while handcuffs snapped around his wrists. This wasn't a routine stop or a simple interview. This was the moment investigators say the illusion finally collapsed. The final desperate scramble of a man whose carefully polished persona had just been destroyed by one devastating forensic discovery. Meanwhile, Nancy Guthrie was still gone. And the longer she remained missing, the more disturbing the question became. Had the real danger been living under the same roof all along? Tonight, the investigation revolves around 3 deeply unsettling mysteries. How did a single ransom call demanding $5 million guide detectives straight back to the family dining table? What exactly was hiding inside the digital ghost traces of a laptop someone believed had been completely wiped? And the most alarming question of all, if the son-in-law truly intended to escape the country, where was he planning to disappear to, and who was waiting for him when he arrived? The footage you're about to witness was never meant for public eyes. But once it surfaced, it revealed something investigators say can no longer be ignored. Some secrets grow too heavy to remain buried. To understand why chaos erupted on that airport runway, we need to rewind to where the story truly began. A quiet evening that started with laughter and ended in a silence that has now stretched for 22 terrifying days. On the night of February 1st, 2026, Nancy Guthrie, the 84-year-old matriarch behind a powerful broadcasting empire, hosted a small private dinner inside her secluded Tucson, Arizona estate. According to those present, the mood that night was warm, even celebratory. Nancy had just revealed plans to finalize a massive charitable trust, a decision that would dramatically reshape how her multi-million-dollar fortune would eventually be distributed. Then, at exactly 9:45 p.m., her son-in-law, known publicly for his charm, polished reputation, and elite social connections, offered to drive her home. He told investigators the story calmly. He walked Nancy to the front door, watched her step inside, heard the lock slide shut, and then drove away into the night. A simple goodbye, nothing unusual. But by 8 a.m. the following morning, that version of events was already beginning to crumble. When staff arrived at the Guthrie residence, they found the front door slightly open. Inside, the house was eerily still. Nancy's heart medication, pills she never missed because of a serious chronic condition, sat untouched on the kitchen counter. Her purse was gone, but her phone was still plugged into the wall charger, quietly drawing power as if she had expected to return any minute. 2 days later, on February 3rd, the situation took a darker turn. The first ransom demand appeared, not through a letter, not through an anonymous drop, but through a message sent from a disposable burner phone directly to Nancy's daughter, Savannah. The instructions were chillingly precise. $5 million in Bitcoin, completely untraceable, delivered within 48 hours. But what happened behind the scenes in the hours that followed would flip the entire investigation upside down. While the family stood in front of cameras pleading for Nancy's safe return, agents inside the FBI's cybercrimes division were quietly following a digital breadcrumb trail. And what they discovered made no sense. The signals weren't bouncing from overseas crime rings or shadowy cartel networks. The signals were originating from somewhere much closer, within a 5-mile radius of the Guthrie family's own vacation property. Before Nancy disappeared, the Guthries had the image of American prestige, wealth, influence, and a carefully polished legacy. Afterward, the situation looked less like a kidnapping and more like the aftermath of a corporate power struggle disguised as a crime scene. Investigators began asking a disturbing question. How could someone vanish from a heavily secured gated community without a single alarm sounding? No alerts, no broken sensors, no security breach. Eventually, agents realized the explanation might lie in the one place they had initially hesitated to look: the family itself. For people sit at the center of this storm, each connected through bloodlines, finances, and buried secrets. First, there is Nancy Guthrie. Even at 84, friends described her as razor-sharp, fiercely protective of the family name, and rarely without the framed photo of her grandchildren that she carried in her purse everywhere she went. Then there is the man who has now become the investigation's primary focus, her son-in-law. Tall, perfectly groomed, and armed with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to influence, he built his reputation on always appearing to be the smartest man in the room. But investigators soon uncovered a different reality behind the tailored suits. Credit cards buried under more than $250,000 in unpaid balances. A mortgage quietly sliding toward foreclosure. A lifestyle of luxury supported by nothing. Why would someone with no visible source of income continue spending like a billionaire? Next comes Marcus, the cousin. A man known to drift between odd tactical jobs, always hovering on the edges of questionable work, and always chasing fast cash. Detectives now believe Marcus may have been the muscle in this story, the shadow responsible for carrying out the physical act of the abduction. Surveillance cameras later revealed something both men initially denied: Marcus and the son-in-law sitting together in a roadside diner just 72 hours before Nancy vanished. And finally, there is Savannah Guthrie, Nancy's daughter. Investigators say she is not considered a suspect, but her role in the story is painfully complicated. She sits directly between the victim and the man now under suspicion. What raised eyebrows, however, was one detail Savannah had never questioned. Her husband insisted on personally managing the security systems across all of their shared properties. And on the exact night Nancy disappeared, that system experienced what technicians later described as a mysterious firmware malfunction. So the question remains: was Savannah simply a devastated daughter caught in the middle of a nightmare, or had she been quietly manipulated by a husband who viewed her mother as something far colder, a walking insurance policy? Each of these individuals holds part of the truth, but none of them appear willing to reveal everything they know. In a family whose entire identity is built on public reputation, the one thing they cannot afford to expose is the truth. And the moment the case truly shifted didn't come from a witness stepping forward. It came from a machine. A laptop investigators believed had been wiped clean. According to internal FBI records obtained by our team on February 15th, forensic analysts were able to recover fragments of deleted search history from the son-in-law's computer. And the things he had been looking up were not the desperate searches of a worried family member. Among the recovered searches were phrases no worried relative should ever type into a computer. How long can an 84-year-old survive without heart medication? GPS blind spots in the Arizona desert. And even Bitcoin laundering for beginners. Investigators say those digital fragments painted a picture far darker than grief. Then another piece surfaced. Security footage from a convenience store just over 3 miles from the Guthrie estate shows a man strongly resembling Marcus walking to the counter at 11:15 p.m. the night Nancy vanished. The items in his hands were disturbingly practical: a prepaid burner phone and a pack of industrial zip ties. The timestamp matters because that purchase happened exactly 90 minutes after the son-in-law insisted Nancy was already home, safe, and asleep. But the evidence that shook investigators the most sits inside a document labeled 44B. It's a leaked transcript from a phone call traced on February 9th. At precisely 2:47 a.m., a disposable phone dialed the son-in-law's personal number. Voice stress analysis later identified the caller as Marcus. His tone sounded tense, almost panicked. He can be heard saying, "Things are getting worse, she needs those pills or this ends tonight." The reply from the son-in-law was colder. "Hold steady. The transfer's underway. Don't let her walk out of that room." Financial records pulled by federal investigators only deepen the mystery. In the 3 weeks before Nancy disappeared, the son-in-law withdrew 4 separate cash payments, each exactly $7,500. The number wasn't random. It's the highest amount someone can pull from a bank without immediately triggering federal reporting alerts. $30,000 vanished that way. Officially, he claimed the money went toward home renovations. Yet agents found no contractors, no supply receipts, and no evidence that a single wall had been touched. Everything points toward a chilling possibility. The kidnapping wasn't impulsive. It was prepared. Still, one strange detail disrupts the entire ransom narrative. The Bitcoin wallet referenced in the demand note was never activated. Not once. If the kidnappers weren't planning to collect the money, what were they really trying to achieve? To understand that possibility, we spoke with people who spend their careers analyzing criminal psychology. According to Dr. Elena Vance, a former FBI behavioral profiler, the son-in-law fits a specific pattern. He shows the traits of a malignant narcissist who's slammed into financial ruin, she explains. For someone whose identity depends on wealth and status, losing everything feels like annihilation. If Nancy planned to alter her will and cut off his access, she wouldn't just be a relative anymore, she'd become an obstacle. Suspect profile: the son-in-law, age 42, highly educated, publicly polished, a history of questionable financial activity that always seemed to vanish through quiet settlements. Investigators describe him as a performer. During his first 6-hour FBI interrogation, he appeared in pajama bottoms, portraying a devastated family member so convincingly that one agent reportedly described the display as Oscar-level grief. But retired FBI Special Agent Russell Dante recalls the exact moment that performance collapsed. "When we played the 247 recording, everything changed," Dante says. His face didn't just lose color, it drained completely. That's what it looks like when someone realizes the story they built is about to fall apart. Suspect profile: Marcus, 38 years old. Former private security contractor discharged under troubling circumstances. Skilled enough to bypass surveillance systems and familiar with tactical logistics. Detectives believe he could have disabled the Guthrie estate's camera network without leaving a trace. As Detective Thomas Holloway from Scotland Yard's kidnapping unit explains, in crimes like this, the mastermind recruits the muscle thinking they can control them. But the muscle becomes unpredictable when things go wrong, especially when the victim's health starts failing. Marcus, Holloway suggests, wasn't a career kidnapper. He was a desperate man helping a relative. And desperation can be the most volatile ingredient of all. If sources are correct, and Marcus has begun speaking with federal agents, the son-in-law's carefully crafted narrative could soon be dismantled by the one voice that was actually present when Nancy disappeared. The geography of the case only deepens the unease. Nancy's Tucson estate sits 114 miles away from a remote desert cabin owned through the son-in-law's holding company, a 2-hour drive across the emptiness of the Sonoran Desert. One theory suggests the plan was simple: hold Nancy temporarily, pressure her into signing documents restoring the original will, or force a $5 million payment. But that theory collapses under one brutal fact: her heart medication was left behind. No kidnapper expecting ransom would deliberately remove the one thing keeping an elderly victim alive. Which leads investigators to a far darker possibility. Theory 2: inheritance acceleration. Under this scenario, the abduction was never meant to end with Nancy walking free. If she simply vanished, her estate could remain trapped in legal uncertainty for years. And if a body were eventually discovered, the original inheritance distribution might activate before the new charitable trust could ever be finalized. The timing surrounding the airport arrest only fuels suspicion. From Phoenix Sky Harbor, the Mexican border sits barely 60 miles away. If the son-in-law was trying to escape that morning, investigators now believe he wasn't just fleeing federal agents. He may have been racing away from the very place where the deal was supposed to end. But if Theory 2 is correct, it raises the most haunting question of all. Who was the third person seen on a neighbor's dash cam at 3:15 a.m., driving NY's Cadillac away from the scene? The son-in-law was at home. Marcus was at the 7-Eleven. This leaves a 15-minute window and a 7 miles gap that remains unaccounted for. Was there a second accomplice? Someone who knew that there was a weak point in the back door that the son-in-law mentioned in his deleted texts. The desert is vast, and it keeps its secrets well. But the tire tracks found near the Ironwood National Monument suggest that Nancy Guthrie may have been moved 3 times in the first 48 hours. This brings us back to the tarmac at Sky Harbor. The FBI didn't move on the son-in-law because of a laptop or the phone calls alone. They moved because of a single jaw-dropping connection made just 2 hours before his flight was scheduled to depart. While searching the son-in-law's office, agents found a second burner phone hidden inside a hollowed-out book. On it was a single outgoing message sent at 4 a.m. today. It wasn't for Marcus. It wasn't to a lawyer. It was to a real estate agent in a non-extradition country confirming the purchase of a villa in the name of Nancy Guthrie. The realization reframes everything. He wasn't just trying to steal her money. He was trying to steal her identity by keeping her missing but legally alive in a foreign jurisdiction. He could have siphoned her accounts for decades without ever having to produce a body or a death certificate. It was the perfect white-collar murder, a disappearance that never ends. But as the lead agent, Russell Dante, stepped onto that private jet, he didn't find Nancy Guthrie. He found a suitcase containing $500,000 in cash and NY's framed photo of her grandchildren. The son-in-law's face went slack as Dante held up the photo and asked one final question. Where is she, Tommaso? The silence that followed was the sound of a man who realized he had run out of road. The son-in-law is currently in a high-security cell, refusing to speak. Marcus has disappeared into the desert. And Nancy, the most haunting question remains. Is the 84-year-old woman who loved her family still out there waiting in the dark for a medication that will never come? Or was she gone before the first SUV even hit the tarmac? The footage from the interrogation room ends with the son-in-law looking directly into the camera, a small, cold smile forming on his lips. He knows something the FBI doesn't, and he's not telling. You've just seen what the mainstream media refused to cover. The raw, unfiltered evidence of a betrayal that goes deeper than anyone dared to imagine. This isn't just a story about a missing woman. It's a story about the terrifying things people will do when their back is against the wall and the mask finally slips. The FBI has the son-in-law, but they don't have Nancy, and they don't have their third man from the dashcam footage. We are currently working with our sources to track the location of that second burner phone's final pings. There is a location in the Arizona desert near an abandoned mining shaft that matches the coordinates found in the son-in-law's ghost files. We are heading there next. Now, I want to hear from you. Drop your theory in the comments. Do you think Nancy Guthrie is still alive, or was the ransom just a distraction for something much more permanent? Share this video with someone who needs to see the truth about the Guthrie case before it's scrubbed from the internet. And make sure you are subscribed with notifications turned on for more. Next, we uncover a connection between the son-in-law and a local politician so disturbing we almost didn't publish it. The deeper we dig, the more people want us to stop. But the truth doesn't stay buried forever. It just waits for someone with a shovel. Nancy Guthrie's grandchildren still have her photo on their nightstands, waiting for a grandmother who might never come home. For their sake, we won't stop until the desert gives up its dead.